it's Lisa. Welcome to my sewing room. Today I'm working on a quilt out of strips, and it's scrap quilt, and this is also going to become a donation quilt, and I want to share with you how I chose the pattern, where it came from, and a little bit about my scraps and how I'm pulling this together. Does anybody remember this quilting book? This goes back to the 1980s, and it is still my favorite quilting book. I've had it since about when it came out. I bought it, I get new when it was released, and I just love it, and I've made a lot of things out of it. I wanted to use some of my scraps and to make a quilt, and so I started going through, looking for patterns, and I happened to go through this book, and one of the very first ones in here is called the Roman Square. And that's what I'm doing for making this particular quilt. Now, the one that's in this book, Quilts by Diana McClune and Laura Nones, is set on point. But I'm not going to do it that way, I don't think. I think I'm going to set it straight. And I may, as I've been playing with these blocks that I've created, I may actually deviate from the pattern, which wouldn't surprise me at all because I always deviate from the pattern. In fact, I hardly ever really use patterns. I go to books to find block patterns, and then I start doing something different with them. But this was my starting point. Love this book. You can still find copies on eBay. It's wonderful. Now, this is using scraps, and to me, there are different levels of scraps. There are scraps where this is something that's probably going to get put into a quilt for myself. It's a fabric I love. I just don't have a lot of it. Or there are things that it's really old, I'm trying to move it out, or I just never liked it to begin with. The fabrics for this quilt kind of came out of that basket. This basket contained fabrics that I maybe originally liked, but in this case, it's very multicolored, or I love these hyacinths on here, but it's pretty bright and bold, and it's a little hard to use, and it just sort of ended up in the scrap basket. So I went through this particular basket, and I pulled out a bunch of fabrics, and I cut them into 2-inch wide strips to follow the instructions in that quilting book. You do 3 2-inch wide strips, and you sew them as strips, and then you cut them up to make the blocks. And some of them, like this particular fabric, this is one that I had a fat quarter of this. It came in a bundle with a bunch of other stuff, I guess, and it reminded me of 70s polyester fabric, and not in a good way. Not that is a good way to remember 70s polyester fabric, but it's cotton fabric, but that's what it reminded me of. And I knew it was never going to make it in a quilt. So I used the whole thing. I have some stuff in here that's really old. This one, I have a quilt hanging in this room that I made 15 years ago, and this is one of the fabrics that's in there. So I've got some of the stuff I've had. This is another one that I've had a really, really long time. And so they ended up in as strips. The instructions include doing light colors and darker colors. And in fact, in the light colors, you will recognize, this is a fabric I was just using in the last quilt video. When I had some left over off the backing, I just went ahead and cut it in strips because I didn't really have enough to do anything else with. And this kind of odd little print is not going to work its way into another quilt very easily. So what I did was just sew those into strips, and then I've cut them into these blocks. And the way the instructions have it listed is you're supposed to do 2 dark colors and 1 light color. Well, the reason why I think I'm going to start deviating from the original plan is that you can see I don't really have dark colors here. I have more medium tones and light tones. And some of them I have really dark tones and light tones. And when I start mixing these on my design wall, I think I'm going to get some odd stuff that's not going to go together so great. So I'm going to lay some of these out on the design wall, and we'll take a look at how I can go from my original plan and maybe do something different. So I've just put a bunch of squares up there in the arrangement that the book shows, where some of them are horizontal and some of them are vertical.
kind of alternating. And I'm going to try some different things and see whether I like them maybe going across in rows. So all of the dark or medium colors kind of line up going across, and then I tried doing alternate rows going a different direction, just seeing how I like that. So it's just you can do a lot of things with a simple block, simple square, and try different versions of this. Then I tried doing some alternating where I had the darks and lights, not all the lights lined up, but as you can see, staggered. What I found with that was you really couldn't discern the pattern well enough, and that kind of goes back to my values. Is
Something I quickly realized as I've been putting these on the design wall is I end up grabbing too many of two similar blocks to put together. So I went ahead and divided them up, not exact piles, but ones that have maybe two of the same fabric together. And that way I can go through and pull off of each of the different piles as I'm putting up on the design wall. While I had these in groups, I decided to try a version where I took from one of the stacks and then created a block of 4 out of each of the stack, taking a similar color for the center pieces and then kind of working them around that. So that's another approach to the block that's a little more consistent with color.
okay, I'm going to try some other arrangements. In this one, I have the center colors going staying together, kind of going down in a vertical line. That would require staggering them, and the piecing would be a little bit more trouble. Not a lot, but a little bit more. So it's just another version. Then I tried putting them straight across in row, and for a while I really thought this was what I was going to use. But in the end, I came back to the design where they are blocks. This really just appealed to me the most. And now, not all of my 4 squares that make up a block are exactly the same. But what I did was make sure that all the centers were the same. So like this one has 4 burgundy rectangles that are together. Even though the outside pieces are different, they're close enough that you still get the appearance of an overall block that is coordinated.
This is the completed quilt. And I'm holding this up because I currently have another project on my design wall, so it's just a little bit easier for me to hold it up and show you. The way that I quilted it, first of all, I added a border, and it's the same as the backing fabric that I had, and I really like that. And then the binding, I just took some of the fabrics and cut them into the appropriate width strips to do binding, and I really, really like that contrast between the border and the binding. The way I quilted it was to do sort of an all over kind of meandering stitch, and there's a leaf print inside each of the light colored rectangles. And then it created this design on the back. More and more I'm using solid colored backing fabrics or near solids, something that's really simple like this fabric might work well for a backing fabric. That's not what I'm using it for, but I could use it for that because I want to see the quilting design that I end up with. And this one just happened to make a pretty design. And then the border is just a leaf kind of border. So, and I will do an all-over picture of this so you can see it at the end of the video. Handling the quilt like this reminds me, though, of something that's unrelated to quilting, but many, many years ago, it's approaching 30 years ago, that I started a business making custom window treatments, and I did that for many years, but my mother had done window treatments when I was real young, and she gave me one piece of advice when I started. She said, never wear lipstick when you're hanging window treatments. Now, mind you, I was the kind of person who put on my lipstick first thing in the morning before I went to work, my regular job, and never reapplied it all day long. But so I did not have on lipstick when I was going to do installations at nights and weekends. But it was good advice, because when you're handling fabric up close to you, you can imagine what's going to happen if you have on the lipstick. And that's what kind of reminded me of that. I'm trying to hold this up for the camera. But anyway, that is my scrap quilt. I like it because it's kind of a cozy quilt. It makes me really feel like it will be something that will be nice for someone to enjoy. And it will go to our Quilt Guild. They will donate it for one of their service projects. So thank you for watching. I hope you'll turn your scraps into something warm for someone else. Take care.